Whether you're running small meetups or large conferences, exhibitions, and concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. The podcast is sponsored by our ticketing system, EventsFrame. Make the switch from Eventbrite today. It's got full integration with all the main payment gateways, so you can use Stripe, PayPal, Braintree, bank transfer, etc. And just announcing email integrations with all the main email marketing software systems, including MailChimp, Zapier, Infusionsoft, and Aweber. We've got thousands of live events using EventsFrame, so give it a try, and we're sure it'll help you run amazing events and save money. So today's interview is with Mike Michelini. Mike is a really interesting guy. He lives in China, so it's someone like me who's fascinated by China. It was really great to talk to him, both what it's like to run events in China and what it's like just to live in China. He's been there for a long time. He also talks about the big trade shows. If you buy any kind of product manufactured in China, probably originated by a meeting at one of these big fairs. There's the Canton Fair and there's Global Sources. And they're huge, huge events where people come from across the world to source products. So Mike's got tons of great information about how the events industry works out there and how maybe you could run events in China. So on to the interview with Mike. Hi, welcome to the Events Podcast. Today, I'm talking with Mike Michelini. I hope I'm saying that your last name right.
Great job. Great job.
Cool.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot. Mike runs globalfromasia.com, and he's a super interesting guy. I've met Mike a few times. We're both in a membership group for entrepreneurs, for location-independent entrepreneurs called Dynamite Circle, which everyone should check out. I've mentioned that a few times. And Mike runs this business. Now, Mike's doing a lot of stuff. If you check out globalfromasia.com, it's almost overwhelming, all the things he's doing. He's advising companies on doing business with China. He's running events. And generally, a really interesting guy. We're going to talk about living in Hong Kong, living in China and Asia, doing business in Asia, and obviously running events in Asia. So, hi, Mike. How you doing?
Awesome intro. Thanks, Dan. I feel great.
Cool. Yeah, Mike, an interesting backstory. Like, I failed to meet Mike in China. I had this all planned, but I made the mistake of listening to Mike because I was going to the one border crossing. There's two border crossings from Hong Kong to China where you can take the MTR, isn't it? And I was going to one, and Mike's going, let's meet at this other one. It's easier. And I'm like, okay, I'll meet at the other one. And then, unfortunately, this border crossing, you cannot get a temporary visa. I didn't have time to go back to the other one, so we ended up not meeting. But I almost met Mike in Shenzhen last year.
We recently said we met quickly in Bangkok.
Exactly.
But yeah, I know. I felt like it was funny because I think you even said you read my blog post that knew more than I knew.
Yeah, your blog post told me to go to other border crossing.
Yeah,
I'm like, Mike's the guy in Asia.
My mistake. I should have confirmed it. Yeah, visa on arrival. You can't get at every border visa on arrival.
Yeah, so. It's funny. The Hong Kong Metro, which is the MTR, goes all the way to Shenzhen, which is right to the border, which is pretty cool. And then the Shenzhen, the city, literally starts like it's crazy to see. There's the Hong Kong border, and then it's kind of green on the Hong Kong side, not much around, some small towns and stuff. And then on the China side, it's like literally built up to the fence. Like it's like the city comes it's almost like Tijuana, Mexico to California is almost the same. Like the Tijuana side is built right up to the fence, and then there's like nothing on the San Diego side,
I agree with that. Yeah, funny thinking of Tijuana. I haven't been there for a long time, but yes. Totally true. I mean, it's unbelievable. The skyscrapers now on the Shenzhen, on the China side of the Hong Kong China border. They really got something to prove, I feel.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Shenzhen's, I think it's a much bigger than Hong Kong now, if I'm right, isn't it?
Yeah, I think depends on what how you measure it, but I think the population is bigger now in Shenzhen with about 18. I think it's under 20 million. I think it's between 15 to 20 million.
That's amazing,
population.
So let's take a step back, Mike. Because you've got an interesting story. Tell us about how you first went to Hong Kong and how the whole thing started for you. Because that's quite an interesting story, I think.
Sure. So I think it started with selling online. While I was working on Wall Street, everybody liked to hear the story. I was working on Deutsche Bank, and I was selling on eBay and my own website. Even before the big Amazon days.
So what were you selling? What were you doing? What were you selling?
Bar supplies, cocktail shakers and bottle openers, stuff like that. And just learning the school of hard knocks. Like I didn't have any courses or I didn't have any different programs and just making tons of mistakes, basically. And
how were you getting your products? Were you just buying from Alibaba or how were you finding your products in China?
I started drop shipping. It was really funny. I thought I couldn't find a drop ship for bar products. there was only wholesalers, and I didn't want to take stock in my apartment in New York. So it was an amazing. I think it was smart, but I sold stuff on eBay I didn't have, and I didn't have a dropshipper for. I only had wholesalers,
Right.
and I said 5 to 7 day delivery, and then I second day ordered an order to my apartment in New York, and then second day aired it to the customer for like, I don't know, the first few, I don't know how many orders, but I was of course losing money on shipping, right? But
Yeah.
people thought I was crazy. But then I dropped half the products that didn't sell, and I stocked not a huge amount, but I started stocking stuff in our apartment. It was my roommate and my business partner, my hometown friend. We just did a handshake and started doing e-commerce on the side. And of course, all roads lead to China when you're manufacturing, at least in today's world.
Yeah.
So of course that led to Alibaba, and up late at night with Skype trying to talk to factories, and the headaches. And I think talk about that later with the events, but I love community and networking. So of course I meet a lot of other people in my shoes frustrated with China. So basically I started helping others also buy from China too, and myself, and started I really like the international business side of business, the kind of complexity and challenges of
So at the moment, so you're still in New York at this time, and you start helping people to how to find things from China, just from, and are you still doing a job at this point?
I've stopped to do that. I didn't do that right. Basically, that was almost the last year I was in New York. I was doing that while I was doing my own e-commerce. But I did my own e-commerce I still did it when I moved to China, but I had started in 2004, and then I moved to China in 2007. So I quit my job in 2007.
Why did you decide to move to Hong Kong? And tell us about that.
Sure. So there was a gap. It wasn't totally directly New York City to Hong Kong or Shenzhen. It was San Diego in the middle for about 6 months with my friend. Quitting your job, especially when you get really good, you're on track, in corporate, Wall Street. I was doing really well, and I was, I don't know, 26 or so, 24, 25, I can't remember. But basically my friend had a spare room in his apartment on Ocean Beach, San Diego, and the rent was like $400 a month, no contract. And I was selling online. I was making, more than that, so to pay that and my costs. So my lease was up in New York, and my bonus hit already in my job, and it was like January, February of 2007. Yeah. So then San Diego, and I was sourcing online. I went to the Canton Fair, the Global Sources show, all that crazy chaos in the fall of 2007.
So let's take a stop at that, because that's a lot of people don't know about this. Talk about what a Canton Fair and what a Global Source is, and what are they like?
Sure. So when you start to buy from or source from factories, you're probably gonna get I always recommend people to use either a junk mail or a dedicated email for sourcing, because you're going to be on their email list forever, and there's no unsubscribe. So they'll start emailing you about their trade shows. They say, we have a booth at the Canton Fair, we have a booth at the Global Sources or the Mega Show. There's a few others, but that usually happens twice a year in April, spring and fall seasons, which is usually April or a little bit of May, and then October, maybe it's wrapping up in November. And it's basically like a month long, multiple phases, massive craziness. Can you hear that, Dan?
No, it's not a problem. Keep going. It's cool.
Okay.
a bit of background color to the interview.
So basically, it's just a really crazy trade show season of people coming from around the world to visit, basically like science fair or a trade show booth of events. And
the scale of these though is huge, isn't it? So Global Sources is in Hong Kong, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, Global Sources is in Hong Kong by the airport, Asia World Expo. There's also a Mega Show, and there's HKTDC, and I think there's even some other ones now.
But the two big ones, if I understand, are Global Sources and Canton Fair.
Yeah, and Canton Fair is a little bit further deep into China in Guangzhou, but there's trains to get there. So you got to actually pass Shenzhen to get to Guangzhou.
So these events, they last a month, and basically it's like several football fields, if I understand correctly. It's like a huge, huge trade show, and things change. So 1 week it'll be like consumer electronics, or even more like defined, like maybe telephones or something. Then it'll be like fridges and things. You tell me, but that's how I understand it.
There's like 3 phases, I say, and phase 1 is usually electronics. All of them seem to follow. I think they all talk to each other, or they don't totally overlap. Usually they have, they'll have breaks between each phase, but they all usually follow like the same group of categories. Like electronics, the phase 2 is usually home and gift. And then the phase 3 is like clothes and baby and kind of like miscellaneous stuff, sports.
Right. So that's everything, even like, sporting equipment and everything, clothes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's basically. I don't usually. That's usually the least popular. Phase 3. It's the end. But yeah, it's kind of like any. They kind of just throw random stuff that doesn't fit in the first two.
So
usually it's phase.
Right. So you went out to Hong Kong to go to this event, or what was the story there?
I mean, I was. I felt honestly like I'm a good internet marketer, so I was getting found on Google. I was doing some paid ads on Google AdWords, and I was getting people, I said I could help you buy from China, and I was even helping people buy from China. I was buying from China myself, and I had never been to China, so I felt like, a little bit like, a little bit weird, and it was relevant to my business to meet some of the people I was buying from. And I always recommend people, if you're going to go out to see the factories, you might as well do it during the trade show season. So, I think, I would recommend if people want to come out and see the factories or meet people. Even though it's going to be more expensive because probably flights and hotels are the most expensive because it's so busy, but I still think it's worth it because you can really meet a lot of factories at the same time, as well as you can see them at maybe after or before. But yeah, I visited factories. I came a little bit earlier. I saw some factories, and I went to multiple cities too. I didn't just go to Hong Kong and Shenzhen. I went to Shanghai, Beijing as well. I kind of booked this like multi-city trip where I came into Hong Kong and I flew out from Beijing.
Right.
Back to the U.S. And I was just blown away, honestly. Like, actually, I extended my flight. I guess I paid a fee. I can't remember, but I started blogging too about this. Even then, I could dig it up. But basically, I extended my trip by like an extra week. It was supposed to be 4 weeks. I stayed an extra week, and it was just so intense. Like, it was just so much happening, so much to learn, so overwhelming. So I felt like I had to spend more time here.
Did you have people with you? You were helping them, taking them along to this global sources and things, or were you just there to check it out and just find out how the whole thing worked?
I went on my own. I maybe should have thought of that, but I just kind of went on my own. At that time, it was still early for people to come to China for sourcing. I think a lot of Americans, especially, I can make fun of Americans because I'm American myself, but they don't travel outside of the U.S. I think even some Chinese are like, I guess, bigger country mentality, but I think it's harder to get Americans out of America.
Sure.
And yeah, I was adventurous. I was already kind of like had already been out of my own day job. So I was already kind of like, there wasn't these communities like, you mentioned Diamond Circle. There wasn't these groups. I didn't know anybody like me, honestly. I mean, I didn't know anybody like what I was doing then. So I didn't even think to go with somebody else.
Did you visit the factories that were manufacturing your products, or were you just there to just check out?
Yeah, one was funny. It was one of, I met some of mine. I met one that was doing some bottle openers for me.
Right.
I didn't see their factory, honestly. I met them at the trade show in Hong Kong. They were at the Hong Kong trade show, and I have a funny picture of me with, I don't know, I could send you pictures if you want. It was me with like a t-shirt and like my badges on, and I'm hugging two sales girls, on each side.
Yeah.
And then one of my sourcing clients was tiara crowns.
Right.
So I saw that factory in Shenzhen. That's what I started to notice. I didn't even understand what Shenzhen was as a city because it's not that popular as like Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, but it's always on my quotations. All these factory quotes were saying Shenzhen on it.
It's interesting. I first went to Hong Kong in mid-90s. I was still at college, and a friend of mine was from there, a really good friend, and he went to boarding school in Scotland, but he grew up in Hong Kong, and his parents still live there. And it was still British, and it was right before the handover. And it was amazing. Like, it was still my favorite city in Asia. Like, I went there, and that was kind of the end of, how I understand it, like Hong Kong, the manufacturing used to all be done in Hong Kong. I think that was kind of the end of that period. It was like the 70s and 80s. It was like a huge manufacturing center, which I'm amazed they built these factories in Hong Kong because it's such a small place, but they were kind of multi-story. And then at a certain point, it all kind of moved to China. And really, I don't think there's much manufacturing even done in Hong Kong anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those, because I did see my friends from college. When I came to Hong Kong, they helped me, local Hong Kong people. And they already had gotten their factory out, but they made so much on real estate. But all that factory area now is like getting to be really expensive real estate. I mean, but yeah, all the factories seem to be definitely gone from Hong Kong. Even Shenzhen now, they're moving out.
Oh, really?
Deeper.
Deeper
okay.
in. Interesting.
Yeah, but it's definitely just the smartest thing any of us should have done is bought real estate. It's just.
Well, Hong Kong. Yeah, there's no doubt. Hong Kong's I think it's the most expensive real estate in the world now.
I think so. Yeah.
So you did this trip and then you went back to the US, is that right?
Yeah, I did go back. I did extend, but I spent about 5 weeks in China or Hong Kong and China for in October, a little bit November, and then I came back and I was like, what do I do? Do I stay or I was already actually had already moved out of my San Diego apartment because it was just a month, and since it's gonna be gone for over a month, I was like, why am I gonna pay rent? So I moved out of San Diego. I came back to my parents in Florida for the holidays, like Thanksgiving and everything, and just like, where do I go? Do I can kind of go, anywhere. I was selling online. I was doing some sourcing. So I just said I should go back, I should go back.
Yeah.
So I went back after the holiday at the very end of '07.
Cool. And did you live in Hong Kong first of all?
I should have, or maybe I even had opportunity with my friends there. They thought I was crazy to live in Shenzhen, but I just directly went. Always flew into Hong Kong airport, but I went directly into Shenzhen with my suitcases into a hotel. And the funny story is I hired the girl I met at a trade show at a booth. She was a translator for a factory, and she was helping me look for apartments when I landed. And we were just going around looking for apartments for a couple weeks while I stayed in hotels in Shenzhen.
Wow. And do you need a visa? Like, could you just turn up and start living in China, or is it? Because I know Shenzhen has some special status, doesn't it? You can visit without a visa for so many days and stuff.
I had I believe a 6-month business visa, multi-entry. So I used the same visa I had gotten to visit for my fall trip for the trade shows. So I had already the same visa that was valid. So I just entered again with my business visa at the time for a 6-month multi-entry, 30-day stay, and I used that to enter. That was one reason I picked to live in Shenzhen versus like Shanghai or inner China, because I didn't have an employment visa. I had to leave every 30 days. So by technically going into Hong Kong is leaving mainland China, so that counts. Okay. So I kind of played that crossing the border for at least once a month or for the requirement. But for a couple of years I was just doing the business visa, 30-day stay.
Is there a lot of people doing that still? They're living in Shenzhen and they just travel to Hong Kong every month to get there?
Yeah, there are, but it's definitely getting harder. Everything seems to be getting harder. Like the kind of gray or the kind of bootstrapped or the kind of hustle ways are getting crushed. I mean, of course, that's not really the right way, but
sure.
It still works.
Oh, it's good to, you always got to look for the gray areas, especially in the beginning.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I just definitely moved to Shenzhen. I was trying to get convinced by my friends from college, Tom and Cyril, just put names on them, but they were trying to say, hey, it's a little bit dangerous there. It's a little bit not safe. You can stay with us. We can give you a room. Don't worry about it. You can stay with us at Hong Kong. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to Shenzhen. Like,
that's interesting. Because so many people I know in China just really want to live in Hong Kong, or live somewhere. Or, I've got a really good friend of mine who lives in Taiwan, and he works in China, but he doesn't want to live in China. Because he loves Taiwan, it's more chilled. He lives in Taiwan and commutes out Monday, comes back on Thursday, to mainland China. There's a lot of people like that. I think China is just like, it's a hard place to live, isn't it? I think, once you get used to it, it's great. And if you've got a sense of adventure, it's amazing, but it's not like an easy place. Like, Hong Kong's like the easiest city in the world to live in. It's got everything. It's got every type of food, every type of bar, every type of whatever, anything. It's just completely interesting Western and European place and Asian.
I agree. I mean, after a few years, I was getting a little bit tired of it, but I would say it's true. Shenzhen. The first tier cities in China are getting to be getting up there like Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing. Really? You can find expat areas that would be similar to Hong Kong. I guess the biggest annoyance of expats is the internet in China is totally blocked.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the thing I hear all the time. Hard getting on Facebook, hard getting on Google, anything like that. Using Gmail even is difficult.
Exactly. So that's the biggest difference. And of course, there's a scare of the health of food and certain
the pollution is the thing that everyone gets scared of. They say, I don't know how true this is, but people say you lose years of your life living in Beijing because of how bad the pollution is.
I met my wife there, and I didn't want to. She was trying to convince me to stay there, but yeah, I don't. That place. I mean, that's one of the good things about, or at least used to be about Shenzhen, is it's a greener city compared to other major cities of China.
Great. So to tell us about your business, so the business you built, you got to Shenzhen, and tell us about the business you started building, and then we'll get onto the events you run as well.
Sure. So at the time I first came, I was selling the bar supplies online with my roommate and one of my best friends growing up since fourth grade. 4-year-old nursery school, I think 3-year-old nursery school. Wow. So Andrew, and I was already kind of complicating my life with two businesses at the same time. But I was selling online on eBay website, a little bit of Amazon. This is very early, I was in China, and more like '08, I guess, officially. And then basically I was setting up operations out of my home office. I got a dual office, so it was like a working and living location. And
so let's just look at it. So it was like an office building where people lived as well, or an apartment building where people worked, whatever. So was everyone kind of the same? Was everyone the same?
There was some that used it only for living, and some that used it for working and living.
Right.
And and the funny story is, I registered a local company. I was really afraid to we can talk about differences of Hong Kong companies and Chinese companies, but basically everything is different. So I was really afraid of getting in trouble with the government by having staff in an apartment, and I registered a company, and then they came to inspect the address during the registration process, and it says foreigners can't live and work in the same office. So
really?
I stopped getting nervous. That's a funny picture I have of. I paid basically one of these, they call them nongmingong in Chinese, basically means like a farmer that comes to the city to earn a better income or life. And I paid him to just disassemble my bed, put it on one of his bike carts and take it to a storage. And then I had my assistant help call the government back, and then they visited. They saw the bed was gone. They checked it off. Then I called the farmer guy, and he brought it back and put it back together within like a 2 or 3 day time frame. But I was already kind of getting tired of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was fun. I mean, Chinese, especially then, were just still not many foreigners in Shenzhen. It was still kind of like the head nod to other foreigners you saw on the streets. Yeah, I got welcomed into other neighbors' houses to eat dinner with them.
Has that changed a lot now? Is it now much more foreigners living in Shenzhen?
Yeah, I mean, this city here it's not weird to see a foreigner anymore in Shenzhen.
Yeah.
They're not like looking at us like differently anymore.
Cool. So you set up your home office, and what was your business in? Interesting, you had a Chinese company as well.
Sourcing for myself, but as a separate, as a company, as a sourcing company, and then also sourcing. A lot of them were for the bar products industry, but I also had to the company is called Shadstone, which is still I'm not doing sourcing, but it was basically B2B consulting for Asia. Right. And so I would invoice my own bar products company for the product and my fee, and I would invoice other bar supplies that wanted. Like I mentioned earlier, they were frustrated. You're gonna laugh, but I was using MySpace for networking with other bar supply sellers.
Wow.
But I was helping like beer pong tables and inflatable beer pong, and I was helping like LED ice cubes and plastic martini glasses with the flashing LEDs and beer towers, and for our own as well as our people in the industry. And of course, I also had Google ads for just like the tiara crowns. And it was really all kinds of random stuff, which is actually something I don't recommend people to do.
Sure. Yeah. But I guess you started building like a community. You were helping people out, and you were charging them a fee to source products for them. I guess that was how you grew the business. Yep.
That's how I got it started. And yeah, I mean, it's all through, a lot of it is referrals and networking and introductions and connecting. And actually, I noticed a lot of it came from my personal blog, which is mikesblog.com. And I was like, it was more effective than my company website for sourcing, because people would see me in China, to see my pictures with the fish head soup and the bed being moved out of my home office on the bike, and they would feel more interested to apply to work with me or to source with me through my personal blog.
Interesting. I'm just checking it out. So have you never thought about combining that with your business one, or do you figure you've got too much information already?
It is a topic I've had. I just feel the main difference is like kind of feel like this is more of the story, and like I have more of my family stuff on it recently.
Sure,
You
sure.
heard my kids, I have big dreams for Glow from Asia if it ever gets partners or maybe, raises money or changes, pivots. That's easier for me I feel like I could separate that more than my Mike's blog.
Sure. So you started advising. How did that become Global from Asia then? I mean, let's get into how you started running events
Sure.
to grow this business or to support the community.
Sure. So I basically realized I like internet marketing, content creation, and community building, connecting people. That I actually didn't enjoy the sourcing. I don't actually do it anymore. I prefer to connect people to 3 or 4 or 5 friends that do sourcing. Rather, I don't just do one because it's dangerous to make one intro, but I make a few intros to people. But I realized that my strength is in like you say, all this content and community and creating, connecting people. So there's kind of a gap. But to fast forward through the sourcing and the e-commerce, I realized I like to help people through online content that people can read blogs from 10 years ago and they can still benefit from it. So it started really with the podcast. The Global from Asia started as a podcast, just like here, and people would just I know this show is new too, and my show is when it's first new. People seem to really enjoy the first few because I would kind of learn and connect people, and none of this content was ever put online. Like nobody had ever heard about Hong Kong companies and Chinese sourcing, and it was kind of really early in 2013. And so it started as a podcast, and then of course led to text blogs, the Hong Kong border blog, which is like a massive, almost should be a book. But the events took a couple more years. But it started similar to people always wanted to meet me for coffee when they're visiting, and a lot of people would be visiting during the Canton Fairs, like we mentioned earlier. So the event started to be built around the Canton Fair or the trade show season as a way, hey, you're in town anyway. I know you're probably really busy, but hey, let's throw on top of it another event. So
and what was the idea? Was that to give people like a guide to what to do at the Canton Fair, how to approach it, or just to do some networking and learn best practices?
What we saw was there was some meetups maybe, but especially we started in 2016. It wasn't too much formal education. It was more like go to the show and meet people, meet factories. Maybe there's a bar meetup, but there wasn't really any seminar, workshops, learning, networking.
Right.
And like a full day kind of. We started as a 1 day. Now we do like 2 days as a multi-day event.
Right. So you were just basically just going to the show and showing people around when you started it?
No, it was just we directly jumped into the event actually.
Okay.
I mean, it started maybe with meeting people at the fair, or maybe meeting people for coffee or beers or a couple people at a time. It was 2015. My wife, I always try to credit her. She's got the business brains, because she's like, Mike, you have all these people meeting you and you're so busy. Why don't you just make an event out of it? So of course, it takes a lot, as listeners know and for an event. So we started kind of inviting. I think first is just getting, especially having multiple speakers. First, it was great with the podcast. We went to our previous podcast.
So you had an audience for your podcast basically to start. That was kind of the start of it. And you went to your podcast guests. You were saying.
We invited them to be speakers. Basically, great. I just went down and I said, hey, a lot of them were happy to be on the show. And people like what they said. And so I was like, hey, it would be great if you could come out and share some more and connect with people in the community. And they're like, yeah, I'd love to come. So
this became the cross-border summit.
Yep.
And what did you do? Like how did you start marketing this event? And what did you do for location as well? Just in terms of the logistics, in terms of getting started.
Sure. So for marketing, of course, like we've mentioned, I had the podcast, which helped a lot. And also had the content. We made a full web page as early as possible. Email list was already being built up.
Yep.
So we used those. We also had the local community, of people that enjoyed. I mean, I'd also been in China many years before that, in Shenzhen and Hong Kong already. So, a lot of it, especially I think everybody knows the first events you do, you're gonna have to hustle like everything, inviting.
Definitely.
You just got to invite
Give
everybody.
away a lot of free places as well.
Free spots, inviting, discounts, early birds, like just just as much as it takes. And for the venue is also just a community. Like Gary, he runs a local website called Sheko Daily. It's very niche. It's one district of Shenzhen called Sheko, and he's kind of like the king of this expat area. And he
what's the website? Sheko Daily.
Yeah, SHEKOU daily.com. So it started as a daily deals site and expats English language website. So I was, of course, consulting, not consulting, well, I mean, as a friend, just talking about it, getting involved. And he's like, oh, I have a nice venue that I've been thinking would be great for events. And he took me there and, he helped. He's been so helpful. I mean, again,
what type of venue was it? Just curious. Was it a hotel?
It was a rooftop. It was a rooftop. It was basic. We actually still use it for a lot of our events. We've used it multiple times. It's called Net Valley. It's basically a clubhouse for IT Park. So it's in an IT Park of Shenzhen.
Yeah.
And they have this like rooftop area that has like a restaurant and it has like training rooms and it's got an open wood floor, wood plank like outdoor area. So
That's
I think
cool. I imagine it was a lot cheaper than getting a hotel as well.
Yeah, I mean hotels are crazy. Yeah.
Well, that's what I tell people. Like the thing about when you run especially your first events, and even ongoing, everyone starts looking at hotels, and a hotel typically. They have a delegate day rate, how much per person per day for the venue and food and stuff. And it's typically $50 a day as a kind of base level, most places in the world, and it can go up from there, obviously. So 2-day event, you're going to spend $100 straight away for every person. But you can find co-working spaces, schools, social clubs, all kinds of places where you can get much cheaper deals or even free deals, in terms of you can promote their venue as well.
Exactly. So it's all about hustling. So I'll be actually, we got it the last few times we've had to pay them, but the first time we got it sponsored, it's true. We put their logo on the event. We let them take some of their members in their IT park to come. We told them, hey, we're bringing a lot of international business experts here. It's going to be good for your space. We're going to look to use this multiple years.
So how did it go the first year? You obviously had your blog that was getting people. You had some connections. You knew a lot of people locally, people sourcing. How many people did you get to come to your first event, and what were you charging? What was your basic ticket price?
Sure. So we did, I think even the first year we did break it up into 2 levels of tickets, which I recommend. We had general entry at around 120. Of course, there's early birds and stuff, but I think it was 125 retail US, and it was a 1-day event with lunch. The VIP I think was like 300 US with a special VIP dinner the night before with speakers and special guests.
That's a good idea. People like to hang out with the speakers, so the VIP dinner.
Yeah, it really was cool. And you kind of want to thank the speakers anyway. You kind of got to thank them for coming and get them together, get them special access. So then you basically sell that to VIP guests that will really want to spend extra money.
Definitely. I think it's good to do that the night before. I think the day, like the party after your event, I think it's good to get everyone together, the speakers. People want to meet the speakers, and all the attendees.
Agreed.
But I think the night before, it's great to do a speakers dinner, and especially if you can sell access to that, that's a great way to make money.
It was great. I mean, and also the thing I like about the night before is you can kind of prep the speakers of what to expect and show. We've been doing it at least on site. We've actually done them on site. There's the restaurant there, so we can actually walk them. Maybe not everybody at the same time, but throughout the night, you can take a group and say, this is where you'll speak. This is how the setup's going to be. This is how it'll work. So they're more comfortable and they can sleep on it and prepare, just understand the environment more.
Yeah, sure.
The night before helps a lot. You also answer questions and prepare them for everything. And
so you ran this event right before the Canton Fair, so people could go to it afterwards, or was it after the Canton Fair?
Honestly, I still stick it in the middle, so right. I stuck it in the middle. It was, I think, between. I didn't want to do it in the middle, but there's always going to be some kind of a trade show happening in April. I think the first date was April. It was Saturday, April 16, 2016, if I remember correctly. But it was a Saturday, and it was right. Of course, you're gonna have to overlap. It's impossible not to, but sure. We tried to kind of go where we thought people would. Sometimes what people do is they finish, say, at the Hong Kong Global Sources, and then they go to Guangzhou after So we kind of did it where we had people. We tried to follow the path where people are going into China anyway and stop here and then go to Canton.
Great. And how many people came to your first event?
About 125
That's
plus
pretty good.
speakers, and yeah, it was. It's so nerve wracking, and of course everybody's like at the trade show. Like some of my friends had booths, and they're like telling people and getting people to buy tickets, and people like podcast listeners are like, "Oh, Mike, I bought it the day before." It's still actually, I don't know. That's the hardest thing. I'm sure you talk about this with in your show, is getting people to confirm early is just
Yeah.
such a fight.
So many people do last minute, and you don't want to lose those attendees. So obviously if you can sell out early, great. But I mean, typically with an event, you're taking registrations right up until the end.
Yeah. So there was one we have had to sell out, but normally it's not until a few days before. But I also don't want to be too tricky and say, you could be tricky and say you're sold out, and then people contact you and you say, "Oh, I got a spot."
I don't like that approach. People do that and say contact us to be put on the wait list, and they've got spaces. They're just trying to create a kind of false scarcity.
Yeah,
It's usually obvious when people do that.
Yeah, so I'm afraid to do that. It's
And how has this event grown? How many people? You made it a 2-day event. When did that happen? I'm curious. And how many
the
people?
second year, 2017, we went into 2-day, and it got up. Well, I'll be honest. Actually, we don't want to get so huge. To be honest,
Yeah. Sometimes it's just great to increase the price and keep the numbers the same.
Yeah, so we increased the price. So we've done it 3 Aprils in a row for the summit. We have grown it every year, but we have more on the price and the value rather than on the quantity, because it's. And a lot of event organizers I know in China, especially in China, it's all about numbers. Like we're talking about the population of China, and even sponsors are like, we do have sponsors and they want numbers, but I try to go over quality over quantity. But yeah, I mean, we moved up to about 200 or so. The venues, we've used the same venue actually for all the years, that rooftop.
Right.
We even looked at hotels, but they're all like indoor, no window. We like the rooftop, and people can go inside for the seminar or go outside for the networking.
And is it close to the Canton Fair or far away?
That's one of the issues. It's about an hour and a half maybe from the Canton Fair.
Right. Okay.
Which is tricky.
So yeah, I guess optimal you would be something pretty right next to it. Well, although I guess people, if they're coming to your event for 2 days, they're not going to be going to the Canton Fair those days anyway.
What we've noticed is there's people coming for the event by itself. Maybe not from the U.S. Of course, the fairs are free anyway, so they might as well go. But we've noticed some people from within Asia coming in, just they don't care about the shows. They already have their suppliers or they have their sources. They don't want to they come for the event multiple years.
Sure.
Like Singapore, Taiwan, maybe Shanghai, Beijing, others, Thailand, stuff like that. So
and what about your cost? Do you manage to get speakers for free? Are they kind of interested to come anyway? They're going to the Canton Fair and they'll speak for free, or do you have to end up paying your speakers and paying expenses?
It's definitely tricky. I think it's case by case is the fair way to say it.
Sure.
I mean, some people we have to almost make them sponsor to speak. I don't know if that's some people are like, they definitely get business from it.
Sure.
And then there's some that are like, that's where the community comes into play. They've been on the show, they've gotten some maybe hopefully customers or some benefit from the community already.
Sure.
And of course, some are just so popular and they do help drive tickets and drive the business. So, and they maybe don't really have as much to gain from speaking for their own business. So there's some have been, have to be compensated. But we've been able to play the community card as much as possible to get people that want to just give back to a community and allow us to, support the business and support the community.
Yeah, so tell us about your community. You started a membership community as well, is that right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's been trickier for us to get that momentum. But yeah, we do have some super fans that are involved. We call it GFA VIP.
Yeah.
Special access and discounts across all that stuff you see on the website, what's from events to, even services and discounts we have within our corporate partners. And and a lot of training. So I kind of give all access to the different private training. I've got a few books and video courses and forum behind the scenes, and we have private calls at least once a month with me and our community managers. So, it's more about less is more. So
Great.
what we're noticing is there's so much free information online. It's about the access to the people. So yeah, I mean, I think people that are really more about connecting with others in the community.
Great. So you run this cross-border summit we've been talking about. I see you did more events. What other events did you run or do you run apart from that one?
It's actually one, we don't make too much money from the events, but it has kind of helped support, and it's also helped drive the brand and awareness about what we do. Yeah. So, and my wife's kind of my partner, or my Chinese partner, and she's the one who inspired me to start the events in the first place. She's done lots of events. She should be on this show too, maybe.
Yeah, we missed a whole part of the story where you met your wife, obviously, in China.
Yeah, it's fine, but she's the one who inspired me to start these events in the first place. But the thing about events is people want more, and I think for organizing events, I think if we just do it for the money, we're probably crazy. I didn't want to dilute the brand, or didn't want to dilute the value or the effectiveness. I just didn't. I know we'd had the trade shows twice a year, and some other meetups and events do theirs twice a year, following the April or the May, the spring and the fall. But we didn't want to do that, so we just did it once a year.
Yep.
And we've started to make these smaller brand events, which I could share about. Or you had a question?
Yeah. Yes. No. I was going to ask about the Canton Fair. So, does it work like it happens twice a year? Do we just repeat the whole thing twice a year, or is it a different thing in the spring to the fall?
Basically the exact same. I know people might ask which one should I go to. I mean, I like spring just in general. Honestly, I just picked Cross-Border Summit in April just because I like the spring season more than the fall season. Yeah. Just in general, nothing to do with the fair. They're the exact same. They're just huge football fields, like you said, of booths of factories. So you might go to just meet all your factories, or find new product ideas. They just keep repeating them. I mean, there's I think it's been like over 100 of them over 50 years or something. That's like amazing. This twice. Yeah.
So do a lot of foreigners, or do the majority of foreigners just go to the Canton Fair or Global Sources? They never visit the factory. That's as far as they get is meeting there. Or do most of them go to the factory, would you say, and actually meet the suppliers there?
I'd say the majority, from my rough experience, just go to the fairs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the factories are flying in from smaller cities. Like I mentioned, they're not in these metropolitan areas. So maybe they'll do a handful of factories, but they'll have to arrange that in advance. It's probably not going to happen at the fair. If you meet them, they're not going to just take you to a factory. You'd have to arrange that in advance. So usually it'd be like another hour or 2, 3 hours by car if they're in that South China region. But a lot of them are up in like the Zhejiang province or Ningbo, which is an airplane flight away. So you probably won't do that. I mean, like I said, the first time I came in 2007, I flew to Shanghai. I went to Ningbo. I went to see the factories. I mean, that was over a month. That was 5 weeks here. So if it depends on your schedule and your goals. I mean, I would only recommend really visiting a factories if you're really serious about buying from them.
Yeah.
You might get some free dinner and they call it baijiu. We can talk about the alcohol. It's kind of calmed down.
I've heard some crazy stories about how the factories, take you out and want to show you a great time just to get your business or get you to order more.
Or get to know you more. Yeah.
So tell us about, so obviously Cross-Border Summit is a big event, and just briefly, you run some more workshops and you started running smaller workshops. Was that to have like more focus on certain areas or just different times of the year?
So I don't know. I like to be honest. I'm still experimenting.
No, that's cool. Definitely. Yeah.
The frequency and the format and the pricing. And so we've done these really in-depth. What we did is actually, even in the summit we've done last couple of years, is we do mastermind bonus add-ons. We've done workshop add-ons after. So we do like a pre-mastermind with the VIP now and a dinner.
That's a great way to do it. Tack it onto the same event, and you can focus all your energy onto 1 week to have all the stuff.
Yeah, and then we've done workshops after. I even felt really uncomfortable, but I did it, I think, in 2017 during the event. And we had the speakers speak for like 30 minutes and then say, if you like more of this, I have a 3-hour workshop this afternoon at 2:00 for an additional $400.
Oh, really? I've never heard of that. You were selling in. You were selling during the event, basically?
I felt really weird, but nobody actually complained in it, and people signed up, and we've
Well,
done it. But I kind of felt weird in 2018. I did it after the event.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
but
a more logical place to do it before or after. After I guess is good if you want any attendees to listen to a speaker and then want to learn more, then I guess it's good to do it. Good to do it after.
Yeah, so we did it after, but then some people say it's so exhausting. It's been like three, if they did a mastermind 2 days full event and then a fourth day for the workshop, they're like brain dead,
Yeah, I'm sure.
But we did do a separate event. I think you mentioned it in a show earlier, but cross-border matchmaker. So it's more about the networking and connecting. We just finished one as of recording, like literally like a week ago. This time was the dinner the night before. It was a VIP dinner.
Tell us about a cross-border matchmaker. How many people and what was the format for that event?
So we're getting better. There was another 100. It was just same size as our first summit, which was like around 120. But it was less about speaking and learning and more about matchmaking, not about dating, although there has been some personal relationships or more about business deals, especially because we have this unique ability or unique community of Chinese and Asia business people with like international expat business people, still within English language as much as we can. But it's more about speed dating. So I set up, it was the second year we did it, but this year we kind of get trapped into more speakers. So the first time we did it was last October 2017, but it got to be way too much speaking content, and it was only just a few roundtables and connecting. Yeah. This year I really insisted because it seems like the trend is the speakers want to speak. They didn't seem to want to host or didn't know what the heck a roundtable was. We called it. So this time it was really the first hour and a half of the morning. It was a one-day event, was just around speed dating. So we had one side of the table not move and the other side of the table moved. And we did 10 minutes on a clock. And we had people and we put keywords on the table on the person that wasn't moving to show what they were about. And then we gave like a minute for people to find another table. It was kind of like musical chairs and then start. And then people would just try to. And people loved it. People loved it. I was a little bit nervous because the language and people loved it. And then we did have the speakers. We had about 4 speakers in the morning from like 10 to 12, or maybe 10:30, I think, because it was like 9-ish to about 10:30 was the speed dating. And then we did almost 10:45, I think 10:50. We started speaking until about lunch, 12-ish was speaking. Lunch break. No lunch included this time unless you're a VIP. We're simplifying. And then we had the afternoon was pure roundtables.
How did that go down, not having lunch? Did you get complaints about that?
I was nervous, but the people that noticed were the returning guests. The people that weren't returning didn't notice. And then they just grabbed a group of people and they just grabbed a group of people they wanted to talk with and went down to the because actually I know other people that do events in China or do events, and they say they're so happy that they can't believe I do food because it's so hard. And people you know how it is. People complain about the food.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Actually, the VIP dinner, one of our special guests got horrible food poisoning. It said it was on a toilet all night and couldn't come the next day, and he blamed our VIP dinner. But nobody else got sick.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, also when you do food, you've got to have gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan. You've got to do a whole range now.
Yeah, so I felt good. I felt a little bit weird. I was kind of hosting, so I said at about 12, I says, okay, lunch break, you can go get a group of people and go downstairs. If you're a VIP ticket, come find us. We'll get you to your dinner.
As long as you've got like a shopping center or something nearby with a food court or something where there's options to eat close. Yeah,
there's definitely was enough places. So they were all nobody. There was some questions, but we did a lower price too. So
how much did you charge for the cross-border matchmaker?
So we had again, like I mentioned, the VIPs. So we did about another 100 US, 120, I think was the retail. Actually, we almost kind of did the same as the summit the first year, and we did 300 for the VIP. But the cross-border summit this past April was $500 and $900.
Great! Wow! So you really increased the core event. That's great.
And people are really happy with it because we've also budgeted more for speakers and we've added much more content in multiple days. I mean, it's multiple days. The first year was only one day, 2016.
I think that's a great model for a lot of event producers. Rather than looking just to increase your numbers every year, it's just increase the price. Keep the same number of attendees and make it more expensive. It's a good option to look at. It doesn't work for everyone, but it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. And another thing about the matchmaker, it came from the summit, because one thing I heard from an event organizer was, don't just slam people with PowerPoints all day, but try to have some kind of way where they can walk away with like 5 valuable business cards at the end. Yeah. And I think they'll be happy. Because anybody can, of course there could be the secret content, but most information you can find online, as much as you want to say it's not. I think really people are going to learn, but also to connect with the people. So we started adding roundtables at the end of the events where we'd have the speakers host a table, and we couldn't get people to leave the venue. I had to actually pay extra we did do some at events at hotels. I had to pay extra hour. Like, it was a lot of money because we just couldn't get people to leave the room.
That's a good sign.
With the roundtables, because what we do is we just have different tables with the speakers, and you can sit there and ask them questions, and nobody wanted to leave. It was like, I turned the lights off. I couldn't get people to leave the freaking room.
That's funny. So we've got to finish up soon. Obviously, you're busy as well. Tell us about Colombia. You're doing an event in Medellin, I think. That looks really interesting, because that's a place I want to visit. So I'm curious, how did that come about? And I guess it hasn't happened yet as of the recording of this podcast.
It's March. I'm not sure when this will go online, but March 2019. Yeah. It's going to be 3 days. Well, 2-day main event, 1-day mastermind. But it's close to Medellin, but technically it's in Cartagena. Yeah. So it's that came to be from our community. Esteban is our event partner. He's a big super fan of the podcast and everything we do, and he heard great things at Cross Border Summit 2017 from his business partner, also from South America, Santiago, and Santiago gave him really great feedback in 2017, and then enough to get him to sponsor and come and speak and bring a group of people to 2018's in Shenzhen. And he was so happy at the event of 2018. Even before we did it, we were talking about doing something in South America. But
and what's the purpose of this event? South Americans who want to source from China, or what's the?
Yeah, it's going to be a very cross-border summit between Asia and South America, but it'll be both ways. So even at both of these, we've always tried to have both ways. Of course, we're a little bit heavier on the Amazon FBA and the international on the standard, exporting from China. But we also, even in China events, we had events about how to set up companies in China, sell into China. So it'll be similar. We're going to have 2 tracks. Actually, we've had 2 tracks as well in the summits. So we say go both ways. So it'll be go both ways if you want to learn how to sell into China, or if you want to learn how to sell into South America. And of course, we're probably going to still stick in. We have some pretty famous speakers we're budgeting to bring in that are famous in Amazon. We already got some headline speakers with big lists that we've put in our budget to come. So they'll still be talking about the standard Amazon, English, international, super stuff. But so it'll actually be kind of 3 tracks, but we're going to have 2 rooms. And I think the headline speakers will still be about the international e-commerce. And then we're going to have the rooms about selling into South America and the rooms about selling into China. But that's what we're talking. It's going to be a really amazing. And people want an excuse to go to Colombia. Like, you've said it. A lot of people say, oh, I want to go to Colombia, but looking for a reason to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's closer to the U.S. Even a lot of our listeners come. A lot of them can't come out for whatever reason to Asia. It's a big move from the U.S. and Colombia is not too far from America. And I like exotic. I don't know. I could do it in the U.S., but I think it's pretty exotic, to do it in Colombia.
Yeah, it's true. I always like half my travel is just I want to go somewhere, so I work out a justification, business reason to go. I sort of manufacture some reason I've got to go to this place, but I really just want to visit it.
Yeah. So actually, I have a call with our partner. So I'm partnering with Esteban on this. He actually was so surprised we made this our main event. But again, back to my wife, she says, Mike, I don't think it's a good idea. We have Cross-Border Summit multiple times in the same year, even globally. So he didn't expect us to have this as our main event. He thought we were going to kind of franchise it or have a different option or different location. But again, we don't want to dilute the brand or to dilute even if it's around the world, the last 3 years have always been in China, almost actually the same venue even. This is going to be the first year outside of China. And the idea
So this is going to be, you're going to not do the China one this year, just do the Colombia one instead.
Again, I'm pretty open here. I haven't. We just finished our matchmaker in October this year,
Sure.
and of course, people really want it. So we might do matchmakers, but we won't do. We don't want to use the brand summit in 2019 in China or anywhere else. So the idea of a summit is going to be multi-day, pretty headline speakers in our industry. We're actually going to do awards. We're going to do our first Global Information Awards ceremony there. We have one of the speakers helping us organize the award ceremony in the industry. So we won't do one in China in 2019 called Cross-Border Summit. We're going to thinking about the frequency of cross-border matchmaker, but those will be more one day, maybe a couple speakers, but it'll be more about connecting, and it won't. But the summit will only be once a year.
Okay.
And we're going to bring it back to the East. But we probably won't go back in China in 2020. We're thinking Southeast Asia in 2020.
Yeah,
but the idea is
that's a good place to finish because you recently moved to Thailand.
Yeah.
Curious about why that happened. Like, why did you decide to leave China and move to Thailand?
So it's even connected to the event. So I think the conversation came up with my wife in about April or May of this year. After the summit, and we realized a lot of people came to our event, and especially we were announced Colombia for 2019, and my wife's like, Mike, it's getting so expensive in China. The school is so expensive. We're not really satisfied with the education, even for the cost.
Because we should add in the meantime, you had 2 children, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I have 2 kids. Yeah. They've been a little bit on our show today, but it's getting really expensive. My son is 4 and my girl is 2.5. So she didn't go to school yet, but she's coming up to school. And they didn't speak any English. They had 1 English class a day, and it wasn't really good. And the cost of rent's going up, and the food's going up. It's just hyperinflation in China. And we realized our community is kind of global, and it's not really about China anymore, especially if we're going to do Colombia. So we didn't know Thailand right away, but what we did is we planned a trip in July where we sent the kids to my wife's grandparents' house for a month, and we went to check out different places. Thailand. We did consider Vietnam, but we also consider Malaysia, Nepal, and Philippines.
Yeah.
And we picked Thailand. Basically, there's a long and a short story, but the schools just seem like amazing. Like I just got amazing
international schools you're talking about.
Yeah, the international schools in Chiang Mai for the cost. It's the cost and the value is unbelievable. Like my kids are speaking amazing English right now. Everybody's like, you can speak English. You're American. I'm like, I can't teach my kids English. I'm busy. Of course, I read books in, but I'm not going to be able to teach them English. So there's some in an English environment, and they have Chinese. There's so many Chinese here. They're still going to have Chinese class. They're going to have Thai class.
Even like we run an event at the Thai Chinese International School in Bangkok, which is partly Chinese, Mandarin, I guess, and partly English.
Yeah. So my wife feels comfortable. There's a huge Chinese community here. It's only a couple hours from China. We came back for the event we did in October just recently, so we could still come into China for events. We're trying to be more online based anyways. And if we do an event in China, we could just come in, and we're trying to. That's a whole conversation, but we're trying to kind of have event partners. We're trying to be more like the online brand, and Colombia, I'm helping them, but I mentioned partner. We're cutting him into the, he's in the financials of the events. He's financially connected to it, so we're trying to kind of have event partners, and we can focus on the online part of the event promotions and the branding of the community.
Great. Well, look, Mike, great to talk to you. That was really interesting. I've definitely learned a lot about how it all works in terms of sourcing from China and running events there. So great to talk, and thanks very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out eventsframe.com.